I'm making a list of wants in Borderlands 4 and I'm going to make a video on it. If yours was already said, like that comment. Less legendary drops, pearls, dedicated drops, and a harder game mode. Good in-game content. Powerful DOTs and DOT stacking like in BL1. A good story and a sense of humor that doesn't feel like it was made by Disney adults. Raid bosses and Seraph crystals. And let's get some real raid bosses this time, please. And Sam Winkler being fired from the lead writing department.
And I hate your fucking face, but I love the way you bleed.
Alright, so today I want to do something that no one here on YouTube has done yet in the Borderlands community. You see... Okay, so maybe a little bit unoriginal today, but instead of just doing a top 5 or a top 10, I'm going to do all the best ones that I received from you guys, the Borderlands community, to hopefully help out those knuckleheads working on the next game, and maybe they'll realize just what exactly we want out of this next entry. I've compiled the top requests from the community, and so today we're going to run down everything fans want in Borderlands 4. So to start us off, I want to say that I did not heart a single comment of the 200 plus that I received on this thread so that everyone got a fair chance for their comment to be seen. And I'll be choosing the most liked comments from you, the Borderlands community. And so to start us off, we have Brandon with the most liked comment of the thread, and he says less legendary drops, pearls, dedicated drops, and a harder game mode. So first off, we have to talk about less legendary drops just right off the bat. There's just way too damn many of them in Borderlands 3 and Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, to the point where there are more legendary guns than there are uniques. There are more legendary guns than there are commons. It is actually ridiculous. So drop rates definitely need to try and find a fine medium between Borderlands 2 and 3 and just, those older games in general, while also tying in some of the rare loot, which goes right into his next part, which is of course pearls, as we have not seen those since Borderlands 2.
That just makes no fucking sense. I mean, it's just bullshit.
And I think we can all agree on one thing, and that it's a complete shock that pearls have not made a return in over a decade after the popularity that they sparked back in the day, being a super rare farm back in Borderlands 1. Obviously, they didn't come in until DLCs and were originally a glitch in the game if you didn't know, but I gotta agree, both of them should definitely be back in Borderlands 4. And the next one, dedicated loot drops, this is a given, and if this isn't back, then they've just gotta be completely brain dead. There's no other explanation. And the next one comes from SB, and they say legendaries feeling legendary again, and this one really hits me in my heart because they just haven't felt the same since the second game. And even in the pre-sequel, we had some great legendary gear, but a lot of them, let's be real, they were just complete reskins and rehashes of what we had already seen in the second game, of course using the same engine and whatnot. That's a big worry going into Borderlands 4, as we do know that it is on the Unreal Engine 4. That gives us a big possibility to see a lot of returning legendaries and assets from previous titles. While that is a great thing for the ones of us who do love some of the older legendaries and would like to see them come back, the Hellwalker immediately comes to mind. I know that's a pretty popular and basic take, but it's just a badass shotgun, and I think we can all agree that it needs to come back. But do we want to see a majority of the Borderlands 3 and Wonderlands gear return? Not necessarily. I would like to see a lot of new items, and hopefully they just feel unique again, because a lot of the weapons that we see in Wonderlands and Borderlands 3 are just derivative of guns and items that we've seen in other video games. And it just feels like, Borderlands has lost its personality with the guns along the way. And that's unfortunate, as the franchise has always been about guns. That's literally half of the marketing. So yeah, that's one I completely agree with. But with that, we're going to move on to the next one. And it comes from Lean in the Minute Maid, and he says, Sam Winkler being fired from the lead writing department.
That's rough, buddy.
And for those of you not aware, I'll just go ahead and show you his little bio on Twitter. As you can see there, he has written Borderlands 3, a couple of its DLCs. Yeah, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands also in there. And of course, proudly displayed at the front of the bio, he is the lead narrative director for Borderlands 4. And this is just an absolute travesty. The fact that this guy even still has the lead position of the rider in Gearbox just fucking makes me sick. But you know what? That's another story for another day. While we have got into some of his controversies in the past, that's not what we're here to get to today. Overall, I just think his writing is absolutely miserable, and there's no reason that he should be the lead writer for the 4th game. Powerful DOTs and DOT stacking like in BL1 and make the Hellfire great again. Now this is one I completely agree with. The Hellfire's not only had a steep decline, which me and another Borderlands YouTuber known as Cashew did an entire retrospect on the, steep decline of the weapon. I will leave that in the description below for anybody that missed it. But I would love to see that weapon return to its former glory. But not only that, the DOT stacking and the tech pool in Borderlands 1 is something I always really liked. I would love to see the damage over time stack again like it did. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll show it on screen. You have the item cards here, and a weapon can have a ×1, ×2, ×3, ×4. And basically what this means is every single time that you fire the trigger, say you have a ×4 Hellfire, obviously the Hellfire always comes in a ×4, it has a chance to stack 4 different damage over times on top of each other for massive damage. This is why elements were so great in the first game, and in the second not so much, as damage over time does not stack in any of the other entries in the franchise. Rarities outside of the main 5 colored rarities. BL2 had E-Techs, Pearls, Seraphs, and Effervescence. It doesn't need to have that many, but it made the guns feel a lot more unique in my opinion. Now this one didn't get as many likes as it should have, but I wanted to put it here just because I think it's very important, because when you really break it down, ever since the pre-sequel, when you go from like Borderlands 3 and onwards, we've only seen Legendary as the highest rarity, which just feels weird. Where are the Seraphs at? What happened to all these different rarities that used to be in this universe? Like, not only canonly and logically does it not make much sense, but I would just love to know what happened to them, where are they, and why the fuck have they not came back? So Gearbox, please go ahead and confirm that Seraphs or Pearls, anything, are coming back in the trailer coming up in like 4 days now. Hopefully they do show us some new rarities, but regardless, this is one that I wanted to throw in there because I completely agree with the sentiment that the unique rarities made the guns feel a lot more special. This next guy says, I seriously want gun levels to come back from the first game, gun efficiency or whatever it was called. It just gave you a reason to switch up your weapons for XP and better stats. Now for the ones of you that didn't play Borderlands 1 or you don't know what he's talking about the weapon proficiency system, which was a great like RPG mechanic that made the game really open up in the Endgame, as you don't really have anything like this in the later games. I'm sure you have like badass rank and guardian rank, but nobody really likes that shit. Please just give us weapon proficiencies back. And yes, I know that they probably won't, but the thing is, not only did it give you something extra to grind after you hit max level, but it actually gave you something in reward for it, like giving you better accuracy on your weapons, better damage on your weapons, handling, and so on. I'll show some of the weapon proficiencies on the screen, but it was just a cool system from the OG Borderlands 1. And it's another one that I'm just shocked hasn't at least made its way in some variety into the modern games. A good story and a sense of humor that doesn't feel like it was made by Disney adults. Yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath. Remember, we got Sam Winkler right in this one. The next guy says, good in-game content. The best answer, LOL. And you know what? I gotta say, it is one of the best answers. For me personally, it would be replay value, which none of you said. I don't know why, but nobody said anything about replay value. But anyways, regardless, good in-game content is definitely one of the top priorities, as it gives the game that replay value that I'm talking about. It's pretty much in tandem. They go hand in hand, because without good in-game content, you don't have replay value, which is why Borderlands 3 has kind of struggled in the later years. And while it does have a little bit of a fan base these days, it's nowhere near the cult-like fan base that the first, second, and even pre-sequel were able to obtain. And a big reason for that, especially with the first and second game, was a large variety of in-game content. This next guy says, hybrid weapons and pearls. I already went over pearls, but hybrids are a big yes from me. Holy fucking shit. These are one of the funnest things you can farm in Borderlands 1. It's essentially when a part from another unique item rolls onto another unique, whether that be a legendary, a blue, or a purple. It may even change the rarity of the item. And I honestly, I'm too stupid to even fully explain to you the extensiveness of hybrids. So if someone could give me just a big explanation of it down in the comments below, that would be great, because unfortunately we had the forums nuked a long time ago and we lost a bunch of information about Borderlands 1, and not only that, I'm just not as knowledgeable on it as I am Borderlands 2 and Borderlands the pre-sequel. Hybrids are known for their super low drop rate, but also being warranted as they're some of the best items in the game. Someone else's name over where Randy's used to be in the credits. I wouldn't hold your breath, dude. Unfortunately, Randy Pitchford is definitely gonna have his name on this one, but one can wish, am I right? Dinosaur Man says, DLC Vault Hunters, I want more than 4, and I'm right there with you, but knowing Gearbox, we probably won't get any, but if they're wise, we would see Vault Hunters, because you know, Krieg, Gage, some of the most popular Vault Hunters of all time. You know, it might be a smart idea, Gearbox, but you know, maybe we're crazy. Also, scrub the screen vomit and enemy health sparkly shit. Blood is okay. I completely agree. Why are we trying to censor the game down? And also, just the over pollution and the fucking, just the way guns and shit, the particle effects when you're shooting in Borderlands 3 and Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, it looks awful. It legitimately gives me a migraine every time I play it. And for those of you that have seen some of my past videos, you'll know that's one of my biggest gripes about the game, and just the graphics of them, the modern Borderlands games, that is, they just don't visually look appealing. And the next comment comes from a fellow Borderlands YouTuber, and his name is Fierce Chimera. Shout out to you, buddy. But anyways, he says, a more difficult game in general. These recent Gearbox games hold your hands too much and don't allow players to figure it out for themselves. Also, locking away your inventory slots has to go. It only limits the players even more and makes the game even more difficult on you because it handicaps you. And this is another one that I 100% agree with, because the games not only now are way too linear, but they do a lot of what he just said right there. Hand holding. It doesn't feel like you're completely in control of the Vault Hunter anymore. Like in Borderlands 1 and 2, it felt like semi-open world. Like it felt like you could do whatever you wanted. Go to any DLC whenever. It's not really like that with the third game in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. So if we could get back to that format of where we actually feel in control of the world that we're playing in, that would be great. And with inventory spots, I think we do need to see a lot more. Like in Borderlands 1, I think it was 72 inventory slots we had. And then in Borderlands 2, it shrinks all the way down to 39 as your max backpack. I don't know where they got off with that, but at least in Borderlands 3, we have a massive bank. So I'd love to see, that type of shit return, as well as the trophy room. I think that's another thing that does need to return, even though it's kind of pointless. It's still pretty cool to have. Raid bosses and Seraph crystals. Now, I don't even need to go on about this one. If you've played the older Borderlands games, you know about this. This ties in with our Endgame one from earlier. Having big badass bosses to fight that give you rewarding loot is something that we need in Borderlands games to keep them thriving, especially in a landscape where people's attention span is constantly going down the shitter. I mean, you have not only social medias that are just brain rot 1 second feeding you garbage, but you have games that are, you see mobile games coming out on consoles these days. You see mobile games getting ported to consoles and being freshened up like they're actual games. Call of Duty coming out with another stinker every year. You got Fortnite with the latest nostalgia pull. It's just one thing after another with modern gaming. Bare minimum, Borderlands 4 is going to need some cool ass fights to at least tidy us over during launch. I'm saying at least 1 or 2 raid bosses when the game launches on the disc, not just added in DLCs later on down the line like they did with the third. I'm talking about real raid bosses at the end game. And the next one comes from Dylan Rooks, and he says, Moxie's... Oh wait, you said one thing. Probably a more serious tone in writing. Well, unfortunately, like I said earlier, we got Sam Winkler to look forward to. So probably keep your expectations in the dirt on that one. And our last one comes from Azure, and he says, I think it would be cool if we got lasers back. Now, if you don't know, lasers made their debut back in Borderlands, the pre-sequel, and for whatever reason, we haven't seen them since. Now, it makes sense for them to come back because we're going to another planet. Seems like we're going to be doing some space travel, with Sanctuary 3 literally being a ship that they can fly around anywhere in the third game. I imagine that we're going to be flying Sanctuary to other planets, just like we did in that one. So, with that being said, I think it would make sense that on one of these other planets, we could at least see laser weapons make a return in some way, shape, or another. Kind of goes back to what that one dude was saying about E-Techs in Borderlands 2. It's just another, even though lasers aren't obviously another rarity, it's another weapon type. It's the way, revolvers are in Borderlands 1. It's this whole other subset of weapons that you get to try out. Wow, now that's quite a lot that we want from the next game. But I obviously don't expect all of these to be in here, but after the game does come out, I'd like to revisit this list and just see how many we actually did get. Because if we at least get half, I think it's a pretty good chance that we get a decent Borderlands game. I also want to say that I'm feeling a little bit sick. My chest is a little bit heavy and I'm super congested. So if you hear me like any wheezing or just weird breathing in this video, I apologize for that. I just really wanted to get this video out for you guys, as it was an important one for me to make. Now, what do all of these wants from the Borderlands fans have in common, though? It seems like it might be a little bit of a complicated answer, but you'd actually be wrong. All of them, every single thing that I listed today, every single thing that you guys commented about, they're all things that we should be expecting, not asking for. As unfortunately, nowadays, things just aren't the same. Instead of asking for something new, we'd rather just bring things back. Well, what does this tell you? Well, they obviously made quite a few mistakes along the way, but more importantly, there's a lot of room to improve. So here's to hoping that Gearbox can fill those gaps and make an amazing Borderlands game, because Lord knows, we fucking need it.